Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Friday night episode. Thank you to Freaky Friday crew. You guys were amazing as always. And I hope you guys had a great weekend. Welcome to the show. You've made it to Friday. Your troubles are now over, officially. That's as I understand it anyway, and if I'm wrong, it's not my fault. So hope you guys are having a good night. Tonight we got a great show lined up for you guys. I'm really excited about this one. This is one that's been in the making for several months, but when you are dealing with several schedules and my own inability to plan real well, it takes a while. But we got everybody together tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are going to have a discussion with three friends of ours that have been on the show many times as guests and contributors. We have Lisa Martin, Dan Pruett, and Mike Hetzel joining us tonight as our panel of guests. And they are all paranormal investigators. So they are on the show tonight to be a part of the journey with us. So thanks for coming on, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having
us, Brent.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. You guys are, of course, many times you guys have been on the show, and many times you guys have shared your amazing insights and your knowledge. And it's been just a pleasure to have the chance to get to know all of you. And thank you to all that you've contributed to the portal throughout this year plus time that I've been, able to have you guys on. You guys have definitely enriched every show and made it, a learning experience as well. So my hat's off to all three of you. And I just think right off the bat, probably the best thing to do would be to introduce yourself to our audience. Now, most of the people here know who you are, but there may be some that don't. So why don't we start with Lisa? Just give a little background and a little bit of an explanation about how this journey began for you.
Okay. By day, my day job is I'm an attorney. I'm also a published author. I write books on history and the paranormal. And I grew up on a farm that was the site of a Civil War battle, had a lot of activity, and from an early age, I was aware of it, got interested. And then later, I had an experience while I was looking to buy a house, actually, touring a house to buy, and had my first experience being touched by spirit. And that's what propelled me to start researching, investigating, etc. And here I am almost 20 years later.
And you're involved with Paranormal Science Lab, and that's out of Missouri, right?
That's right. We are based out of Southwest Missouri and work throughout the Midwest, but mainly in Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas.
Oh, very cool. And I know you guys do some amazing investigations and some amazing preservation work as well, which is really, really cool. And so welcome to the show. Mr.
Well, again, thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'm just thrilled you guys are here. I'm just glad this finally worked out for all of us. But Mr. Dan Pruett, welcome to the show, and get everybody a little bit of background on how this journey started for you, sir.
Yeah, hey, thanks, and definitely thanks for everything you do to put this show together. I'm sure I can speak for a lot of people when I say it's a breath of fresh air and nice to have great people in a great environment.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Bet. So my name's Dan Pruett. I'm a paranormal investigator. My day job, I do kind of a hybrid systems network security engineer position. So it's nerdy stuff.
Everybody loves
but
nerdy stuff.
I've been investigating for somewhere between 5 and 7 years, I'd say. I haven't been in it as long as someone like Lisa has, but definitely done quite a bit, been a lot of places, and yeah, much like Lisa was saying, I had experiences as a kid and grew up in a home that was active, and then events later on in my mid-20s kind of jarred me back into getting closer to the truth. So that's where I am now.
That's excellent, and I know, Dan, you are really involved with not only visiting some of the real big sites all over the map, including what is that place called? The place that was the slaughterhouse. I just drew a blank in my head.
Bobby Mackey's.
Bobby Mackey's, yeah. Actually, that's probably one of the biggest bucket list items for paranormal investigators everywhere, and you've been there several times, and what an amazing experience.
Yeah, I love that place. I try and find a reason to go back other than the paranormal, but it's always just the paranormal.
Well, thank you for being on the show, brother. And Mr. MCAT, Mike Hetzel, is joining us tonight, and this is his debut as a guest on the show, but he's been a contributor for a long time, brought some great information and stories to the show, and helped us to understand a lot of odd phenomena. Welcome, brother, and same thing, if you can give people a little bit of background and tell them how you got started.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mike Hetzel, MCAT in chat, and started having a lot of experiences when I was a young child. I've documented some of those. The paranormal was something that was talked about openly when in the family. Both my mother and grandmother were sensitives, and I think I've talked about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't do a lot until it was 2010 when I started actually investigating with a group here in central Iowa called IPART, Iowa Paranormal Advanced Research Team. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Did that from 2010 to 2016, and then I started driving over the road. So I can't investigate as often as I want to, but I still do a lot of research and still tell stories and try and share things.
Yeah, absolutely, and you've done many of those things on the show, and I really appreciate all of your contributions as well. I think you three really to me represent the cream of the crop as far as investigators, and I can't claim to know many, but I'm just really thrilled with how involved you guys are in your craft, as well as doing a lot of research into the field. You guys aren't just taking the canned stuff and going out there. You guys are experimenting and learning and helping to expand the field, and that goes for all three of you. And I just think, wow, I hit the jackpot. So, I guess the next question would be, what I'm going to ask all of you, and we'll go through it one by one again. But of course, there's an inundation of Hollywoodizations of paranormal investigating. What do you guys think of what's represented on the media, and do you think that it's an accurate representation of paranormal investigating, or is it some creative editing and a lot of hype? Lisa, we'll go back to you.
Well, a little bit of a loaded question there, huh?
Sorry.
Yes, and yes, really. I think that the shows have been positive and they've been negative. They've been positive in that it's brought the subject to a much wider audience, and it has encouraged people to share their stories that where they often used to be either ashamed or afraid that they'd be labeled crazy. Mm-hmm. And so there's been more acceptance, and that's good. On the other hand, shows tend to be formulistic, and different shows have different formulas. They're looking for a location that fits certain criteria or a story that fits certain criteria. Mm-hmm. And for some of the shows, that changes season by season. And they have relied, a lot of the shows have that focus on investigation itself have relied on the entertainment aspect, mm-hmm. And tried and have focused on aspects of investigating that, of course, lend themselves to television, more of the aha moments, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, editing is everything.
Sure.
for instance, most of the shows make it appear that they show up, they're there for 6 or 8 hours, and everything that they portray happens then. And in reality, that's not the case. They show up, often they're there up to 10 days to 2 weeks, and hopefully get 23 minutes of usable screen time.
Sure.
I think that they have also, they basically started out, particularly with ghost hunters forward, trying to portray themselves as objective science-based researching, which is slanted because of the entertainment aspect. But what it did was it suddenly invalidated a lot of techniques that had been used for decades, and relying on our minds as a tool. And suddenly things were, unless it fit into a certain criteria of evidence, people were skeptical. Now, that's a good thing in that a lot of evidence can be falsified.
Right.
But suddenly, basically, we ignore a lot of things. And what I'm seeing now is, even in some of the shows, they are kind of getting back away from that, because I think if you have, countless shows and episodes with the same equipment, the same techniques, and most of them are rehashing the same locations,
Right.
I think the audience is wanting something different. And I actually see people going back to more traditional investigation techniques. And for people who haven't been around that long, they're going sort of the aha, like it's brand new. It's also kind of given rise to techie, shiny bauble techniques that don't really have a foundation as far as being objective or actually providing any real evidence other than, you have lights blinking or something like that. The Kinect camera, a lot of the ITC, there's no basis to indicate that it's actually capturing anything paranormal, but it looks good on TV.
Right. Yeah.
So there's good and bad.
Okay. And that was an excellent response, and I can agree with pretty much everything you said, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to set up it for anything controversial. That's not my intention for the question. My intention is mostly that I think people at home get a real unrealistic expectation of what investigating means, and I think it looks really glamorous and exciting, but the reality of the situation, I don't believe is that. But Dan, what's your take on it?
Well, definitely. I mean, with the TV shows, exposure's good, right? Because more exposure means a bigger audience, and of that bigger audience, a certain amount of people are going to, based on experiences of their own, or just they think it's something they could really get into, they're going to start investigating. And
Right.
and I really think that the more people investigate and record data and just push the field forward, the closer we'll actually get to understanding, what we perceive as the paranormal. So, I mean, that's some good that comes out of it. On the negative side, I agree with a lot of what Lisa said. It's created, the paranormal TV shows have created a dependence on, overpriced gear. There was just this market for overpriced gear starting way back, and you have completely, by my standards, unscientific equipment, not going to help me prove to myself what I believe to be the paranormal. Now, that's not completely bad, right? If someone's just wanting to do it because it's fun, they're ghost hunting, they're not necessarily doing paranormal research, Paranormal Investigation. That's okay too. But I think if someone wants to call themselves a paranormal researcher, a paranormal investigator, I think to be taken seriously, I agree. You can't be dependent on video. You can't be dependent on overpriced gear, and you've got to understand a little bit about the physical world around you, so that you can push your knowledge of the non-physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And MCAT, what do you got to say? Mike? I got to start calling you Mike now. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Hollywood has done a real disservice when it comes to paranormal fields. I think that exposure is good, but the glamorization, condensing an 8-hour investigation into 22 minutes, and people's expectation is, oh yeah, it's just going to be like this the whole time, when really you're just going to be sitting in a room in the dark waiting for something to happen, and then nothing happens for an hour. And
right.
That's the problem we had when we were taking on new people. It's the expectation of, oh, we're just going to walk around here, and it's like, well, no, you're going to be sitting over here, and you're going to wait and see if something happens, and if it doesn't happen, you're going to be writing notes in a log of everything that you hear, and like there's a lot of work involved. We got to set all this stuff up. They don't show that. Like the clip of setting everything up is about 10 seconds. It takes a lot longer than that to set everything up in an investigation.
Sure.
And so their expectation gets a little skewed. It's like, what do you mean I got to lug all this equipment in here? Yeah, that's what we're going to do first. We're going to, all this gear, we're going to take it out of here. We're going to put it in there. And we're going to set it all up. And at the end of the night, we're going to reverse. So it would take a while to get a new person kind of acclimated to the idea of this is not just glamour and glory. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of boring times when nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think Dan's group's his group names probably surmise it the best. It's Red Eyes and Dead Batteries. That always cracks me up.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
That's good.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, yeah, that just sums it all up right there. We do have a caller on the line. If you guys don't mind, let's get to a call and see what they got to say.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, area code 801, you're on the air.
Hello, it's me, Gentry.
Hey, Gentry, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Hello.
You got a question for us?
I do. It's a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Actually, 2 questions. No, I forgot what the other one was. I'm curious, if you were just doing an EVP by yourself in a really quiet place, how long is it good to wait before you might hear something? Would that just be 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, or does that depend on where the person is in their dimension or
Do you mean
anything? And is it stupid to ask them to get close to the mic and yell as loud as they can?
No, you're talking between questions, right?
Yeah, there was 2 questions I had.
Yep. Okay. Whoever wants to field that, go ahead.
Well, I took what she meant was how long you could expect to get results when you start an EVP session, depending on what's going on.
Yeah, if you ask a question, sorry I didn't mention that part. If you ask a question, how long should you wait to possibly get an answer?
Okay. Well, of course, things don't happen on cue, and
right.
So it's good to have a good pause, and that could be 10 seconds, or it might be longer, and part of that has to do with, in my experience, if you're getting a direct response to what you're saying, or it's residual and just something's happening, and that can only be determined in context when you're reviewing. I think concise questions are good, and a good deal of silence as well. I don't think anyone has a formula that makes perfect sense. And a lot of it has to do with location. We work with some locations that we've been there literally hundreds of times. And what I find in some of those locations is that activity, is including EVPs, almost go in a loop. For instance, there's a pre-Civil War home that we investigate, and over a course of months, we seem to, activity will be focused on earlier years, and over time seems to travel further ahead in time of what happened at the house, and then eventually kind of loop back around. Why? I don't know. So I don't think anyone has that answer, but I think patience and a lot of silence is good to get better results.
Right. So probably wait 5 or 6 minutes if you're by yourself.
Well, if you're by yourself, I mean, I usually try to wait, especially if it's me or one or two people. We'll try to wait at least 30 seconds to a minute. Typically, if we're doing more public events, we usually wait a shorter time period because the public tends to have a shorter attention span. But
Right.
And you know what else you can do as you're going through your session. You can have multiple. This is something I do. I have a voice recorder that doesn't have an SD card. Right. I can't get data off of it. I can just record and play back. So I'll use a higher end voice recorder to record the session. Right. And then I will ask questions and play them back in real time. With the other recorder, and you can pick up something for, $20 that's going to do the job, and if it's a real clear EVP, if it's something that is really trying to communicate, it won't matter the quality of voice recorder, and you'll hear it, and then you'll know you can kind of sample the waters as you go, I guess.
Right. Okay. And is it silly to ask them to yell as loud as they can? Like you're recording, and you say, if someone says, get close to my recorder and yell as loud as you can so we can hear you, that's just the stupidest thing ever to do.
Oh, yeah, I'd be willing to say whatever kind of stupid things to get a good EVP. So no, I don't think it's stupid.
Yeah, I don't think I'd feel all that bad about that. I don't think that's that dumb. One of the things that we would do is when we were on break, we'd leave the recorders running, and we usually got a lot of good EVPs when we're just talking to each other. When we're not really conducting a session, but just talking amongst each other. We usually pick up a lot of good EVPs that way.
Right. That's my experience too.
Oh, good advice, guys. Yeah,
that's happened to me before. We're all talking, and I got an EVP just from everyone talking. So, yeah, that's happened to me too before. I might try an EVP session by myself. So, we'll see what happens with that one. So.
Now, Gentry, I know that you're dealing with some activity in your home. Are you planning on doing this in your home? Is that what your plan is?
Yes.
Okay. Now, while you're on the phone, if you don't mind holding on, we only got 2 minutes before break, but I just want to get a quick take from our investigators. How do you feel about investigating your own home, guys? Lisa, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I've investigated my home. I don't have a problem with it myself. I think a lot of people do, particularly if they find evidence, and particularly if it's something that they don't quite understand or is not what they were prepared for. I think it really depends on the personality of the person. But if you're not experienced as an investigator, I tend to say that might not be a good idea.
Okay. Dan, what's your take?
What'd you say? If you're not experienced, or if you are experienced?
If you're not, I tend to. I've seen more people who don't have experience as an investigator end up having a negative reaction to investigating their own home.
Oh, okay. I've been on investigation, so I get what goes on, so I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem doing it, but I know some people do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't. I generally, as a rule, I don't investigate in my own home. But I've never, in the last, since I've been doing this paranormal investigating, I haven't lived in a place that was really active. Now, I've had some residual activity when I come back from a really active location. Things that kind of stick around. Disembodied voices and stuff like that for a couple days, and never more than 2 days. But I tend to just ignore that as much as I can anyway. But in general, I wouldn't go looking for something in my own home. But if it was there and it was causing a problem or disruption, then I probably would.
Okay, MCAT, quickly, anything?
No, I don't have a problem with investigating your own home as long as you do it. I don't really want to say carefully, but you don't want to go kicking the hornet's nest if you get my meaning.
Right. Okay.
But as far as doing, I've done my own homes and I've done the truck a couple of times. And, as long as you're careful with it, it should be okay.
All right, guys.
Okay.
We're gonna go to our first break. Don't go away for more of our investigators roundtable when we return. And Gentry, if you have more, stay on the line. We'll be right back, everybody.
Okay.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and this is our Friday night paranormal extravaganza. We are joined tonight by three longtime friends and wonderful contributors to the show, Lisa Martin, Dan Pruett, and Mike Hetzel. I should probably let you guys know it's a new development for the show. For those of you out there listening, if you want to call in and be a part of the show, the Paranormal Portal has its own call-in number. It's different from the network. So our call-in number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, that number is right under the top header of our show tile on the screen. So it's in a little smaller print. I might need to blow that up a little bit, but it should be able to be viewed if you go full screen, I guess. But everybody, welcome back, and thank you guys for being here. We're off to a great start. Currently, we are joined by Gentry, who is a longtime listener and friend of the show. Gentry, thanks for waiting. Did you have more questions?
Thank you for putting me on mute so you didn't hear me this time.
No,
I tried to stay quiet too.
I did hear you. You laughed. I heard you.
You did? Oh.
Yeah, I thought about it after you laughed. I was like, oh, I should have muted her. But no, it was funny. It's cute. Anyway, did you have more questions?
No, I didn't have any more. I just wanted to thank you guys. I didn't want to leave without thanking everyone.
Oh.
I don't know if I should burst anyone's bubble on this, but with ghost hunters, I learned that when I went to Asylum 49 to do an investigation, they told us that Zach had stolen one of their EVPs and used it on one of their other shows.
Oh.
At a totally different location.
And Ghost Adventures? Oh.
Yeah.
Is.
So I don't watch their show because I don't trust where their information's coming from, because they stole that EVP from Asylum 49 and they were really mad about that.
Well, and I understand they may very well believe that, and that may very well be the truth, but I can't levy any judgments on them. But I think it's something definitely to be wary of with the Hollywood shows. They have quite a bit of pressure to produce evidence. And I suppose it wouldn't be beyond us fudging it once in a while. So, but that's, any kind of entertainment. I think, if you're watching Survivor and thinking that there isn't a little fix in on those deals, I suppose it's no different for ghost shows. But good deal, Gentry. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for calling in and being a part of the family.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Gentry. And ladies and gentlemen, the call lines are open. We will get to calls as they come in. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask our panel, please feel free to call in. Again, 720-923-0500 is the call-in number. So we are all ready to go then. So let's see. Where did we leave off before that? The thing that I definitely wanted to touch base with all of you guys is, what is your scariest experience investigating? And this time we'll start with Mike. What do you got for your scariest experience when you're investigating?
My scariest experience? I don't really have a scariest experience.
Okay.
And that's usually because the leader of the group I was with was really good at filtering out areas that maybe we weren't ready for. So I don't really have super scary.
How about the most profound activity then?
That would have been a middle school in northeastern Iowa that had been a middle school for about 100 years, and it was going to be demolished, and so they asked us to come up and take a look. And it was probably one of the most active places that we'd ever been to. And it was a lot of noises. I had set up my audio in the auditorium on stage facing out into the audience. I mean, there's nobody there but the would-be audience. And we had 2 plastic coolers that were full of drinks and snacks. And as I'm getting everything set up, I hear what sounds like somebody dragging a plastic cooler across a concrete floor. And I look over to my right, nothing's moving. So I'm hearing the sounds of something moving without anything actually moving. So I call up on the radio because the rest of the team was setting up shop in the teacher's lounge. And I'm like, is anybody moving anything? And they call back, nope. And I'm like, okay, note it down in the log, on to the next.
Wow.
But it was a lot of noises that you couldn't pin down. It was, we were setting up shop in the teacher's lounge, and it sounded like somebody was moving heavy furniture a floor below us. Mm-hmm. And so my first thought was, let's make sure we're the only ones in here. So I grab another investigator. We go walking around the place. There's nobody. Nobody's in there. Can't find anybody. And I'm like, you guys aren't supposed to be in here. If I find anybody in here after dark, you're not going to be able to see the outside of the school again. Come on, just come on out. Nobody was there. So, and these little noises would just lead you around, just from one floor to the next to the next. The H room had, there was 2 levels to the auditorium. Then there was a staircase and an atrium between, and it would just go on a loop from one to the next. And,
wow.
You could never track it down. It was really, really a good night.
So like they were toying with you, huh?
Yeah, they were just playing little games.
That's amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Dan, what about you? Either scariest or most profound activity?
Yes. So I think my most profound activity actually spanned 2 locations and 2 completely different months. Both very active locations, one being Bobby Mackey's, the other being Mansfield Reformatory in Ohio. So Mackey's was the first place I experienced the phenomenon where in a pitch black room, things get darker. It gets darker, and I mean, I'm not just witnessing it. An ambient light detection that's data logging said the same thing. And it gets darker and darker and darker, and then a little bit lighter, and then darker and darker, and things start moving around. And, so I had that happen at Mackey's and at Mansfield. At Mansfield, it was a little more in your face. Definitely kind of peacocking around us, making all kinds of noises. Again, ambient light detection data got it there too. Almost the same, spikes and degradation in lumens too. It was pretty interesting. But
Dan, if I could ask a question about that.
Yeah.
Was that ambient light detection? If you notice that is that more random, or there's some kind of cycle to it?
It seemed like there was you could extrapolate that measurements, but they would be the same kind of scale to it. It would be different variables, but if you were to graph or chart it out, rather than the lines would look the same.
Okay.
No,
that's all.
Okay.
That's all I had.
No,
okay.
That's interesting. And now I know, Dan, you've shared that before, and in fact, you've had not only those 2 experiences with that dark kind of phenomenon, but you had experienced something out at your home, hadn't you?
Yeah, actually, that was in my home. That was what kind of got me into the paranormal investigating. Wow. Or at least to go from more of a TV watcher, book reader, to actually getting out there, joining a group, learning about the science behind it and smart data collection and the whole nine. But yeah, it was an event like that got me into it. And that's the one I chase. That's my.
Apparently he's out there. And Lisa, how about you?
A couple of things come to mind with when you say scariest or most profound. One, probably profound as far as the most loud and intense activity at a location that was a large apartment building, and it's abandoned at that point. Well, it's being rehabbed, but building's locked down, no one's there, and police know we're there, know us very well. And while we are it's a 5-story building, we're on the 3rd floor, and we start hearing what sounds like above us and partway across the building, floor up, sounds of furniture or something heavy being dragged across the floor, kind of what was being described earlier. But it sounded like something very heavy. And then you start hearing what sounds like 2 men arguing, and it starts coming towards the stairwell close to where we are. And so we decide to go down a floor, and then half of us decide to go up the floor, the other stairwell up behind it, trying to see if we could track down exactly where it was coming from. It was coming down the stairs, and then it moves to the 3rd floor, and it gets more intense and louder, and you hear the sounds of glass breaking. To the point that it's, it really sounds like someone's in the building. And to the point that one team member, who's actually a first responder, said, no, this is crazy. He called dispatch and asked, if anyone was around, if they'd had any calls or something, because something was in the building. And they went ahead and sent over a dog team and went through the building, couldn't find anything. And actually at the same location, had the same experience multiple times on different floors. And it just, something very intense going on, but and would be caught on audio, but nothing would be disturbed, and there was dust on the floor and everything. There's no footsteps, any prints or anything. That was pretty amazing. The closest I've ever been to, quote, scared is, I'd say I was concerned. We were investigating a Civil War battle site. It's outdoors, and part of it is now a park. And we were in the rear area of the park, and we were wrapping up for the night, leaving, and I happened to be the last person in line walking out. And all of a sudden, I don't know if anyone else here has ever had the sensation, it's the wet blanket sensation. It's the sensation of something heavy being thrown over you, like a heavy blanket, but it's you don't see anything. And all of a sudden, it was like I was rooted to the ground, couldn't move forward. I start to call out. Everyone keeps walking. No one can hear me. And so I'm pushing. And this goes on long enough that the rest of the team had walked several hundred feet.
Wow.
So I was starting to get a little concerned. Then, boom, it was gone. And I'd been pressing forward enough that I had to catch myself from falling. And I stood up and turned around, and about 5 feet behind me was a shadow figure, indefinite line of Civil War soldier. You could see the lines of cap and looked like a long barrel rifle over his left shoulder, just looking at me. And he turns to his left and takes 3 steps and disappears.
Wow.
And so that was the one time that I started to be a little concerned.
Yeah, what a profound experience. I remember you shared that on the show, and it was like you were like almost zoned into a different like time-space kind of fluctuation or something. Like you couldn't move and time passed weird for you, and you were stuck. That is just surreal.
Well, I really wasn't stuck time-wise. I was just rooted. I physically could not move. It was like I was in a bubble.
Right.
And I've heard other investigators describe, the wet blanket sensation, something heavy coming over them and you can't move. And it's not like sleep paralysis or anything. It's you physically are in a area that you can't move out of, like a bubble almost. And so that was interesting. And that place is interesting because you get a lot of activity that seems to be related. It was used as a battle site as well as camp by both sides at various times. And it's as if the soldiers that are there, they're very wary of people, particularly men, and we would typically separate, and the women be in an area and the men would never get any responses to anything. We would get EVPs, other activity. One night we were doing an EVP session, and you could hear someone walking around us, and you could hear their trousers swish as they walked. But there would be nothing around the men, as if they just weren't going to reveal anything.
Wow, that's wild, and that seems to come up a lot, though. That there seems to be maybe even just one person on an investigation that things seem to happen for, whereas everyone else just doesn't experience much in terms of personal experiences. Like there are many cases where one person, I don't know whether it's is an energetic thing or are they just something about them appeals to the presences there or what? But do you guys notice that as well? Lisa, we'll start with you since you just were talking.
Sometimes, for instance, even that situation, I mean, there are other things that happened that evening. For whatever reason, I think they were just really, someone was checking me out. But, and I think it's one of those things that sensitives and empaths tend to attract activity. And I do think it's either some sort of energy-based or brainwave or something. And then you also have to be careful, particularly with people you haven't investigated a lot with, because some people are going to tell you they have experiences regardless.
Sure.
And so you have to be careful and know the person well, because I have seen people who, they have the same experience everywhere they go. And I'm not trying to
I know what you're saying.
To disbelieve, but pushes belief to the limits, we'll say.
Right, embellishing a bit.
Right.
Sure. No, that's cool. And Dan, how about you? Have you noticed that kind of behavior as well? That one person seems to really key on all the activity?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it kind of shift from investigation to investigation. Someone might, have, be the person all the spirits want to deal with, and other times it just doesn't happen. And I mean, personally, if I stop, daily EVP sessions, and I do a lot of investigating, especially when I'm on the road working. But if I stop for a couple of weeks, I'll notice that I'll have a dry spell for a while. So I think the stronger the connection that you have, the more you'll get that, exactly like Lisa was saying. I mean, it's like a muscle. I look at it as like a muscle. It's something you've got to exercise, something you've got to keep in pretty good shape to really make work. And yeah, absolutely. I believe there's no mystery why the people that are passionate about paranormal investigation are, right? Because we're attracted to it. There's a reason we're attracted to it, and I think that has something to do with it.
Oh, good point. Good point. And Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I've seen similar things. We've had our archivist, her name is Jo, and usually at some of our investigations, she would get her hair pulled. She would usually be the only female that get kind of picked on, where they would just pull their hair. So yeah, I've seen it kind of zero into one particular person, or maybe we'll play the shave and haircut game, and that only works for one specific person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I don't know as to why that would happen. Is it, that connection with that person, or maybe they like that person better, or they have an easier time seeing or hearing that person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've seen a correlation where some investigators just are more maybe tuned in to having things happen.
Right. No, I definitely think that you guys are dead on with that. It just seems like some people, and thank you, Lisa, for saying about the sensitives, because the psychics and stuff, and I think we all agree that they just tend to be beacons for all kind of activity, and maybe that's part of the reason they're psychic, is they just keep drawing those presences, and I do believe that these entities and beings can choose who they talk to. I mean, they're not just. I think that if it's an intelligent haunting, for residual, I don't think that matters. But for intelligent hauntings, they may choose to reveal themselves more to a person, and it may be based on their psychic awareness or something that resonates. And I'm by no means any kind of expert at all, but it seems to come up so much that there's definitely something to that. We also have some questions from the Facebook poll that I threw out there, and I let everybody know a week and a half or so ago that we were going to have this episode, and did get some questions. And the first question for our panel is being a psychic medium who does investigations myself on occasion, do you feel like having someone like myself on your investigations team helps or hinders your investigations? So, MCAT, let's start with you.
Good question. It can do a little bit of both. We've had psychics on the team where we didn't really have a set of procedures in place, and so they would just kind of blurt out whatever they came in contact with, or whatever they saw, or whatever they felt. And the problem we started having was, as soon as that happens, it immediately ruins the objectivity of the rest of the team. Right? If they say, "Oh, I see a headless person in a corner," well, if anything happens, the whole team's going to, or most of the team's going to attribute it to that. So you have to be careful to try and maintain objectivity. So we had to develop a series of procedures of, whatever you see, sense, feel, hear, we're going to write that down, and then if it matches up with something that somebody else saw, then we can incorporate it with the total data that we have that goes to the client.
Excellent.
So I think they can be helpful, but I think a set of procedures would be necessary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dan, how about you? Dan, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I was sorry. Can you let Lisa go? I was being distracted.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Lisa. Then go ahead.
I do agree. I think it can be good and bad, and coming from the perspective of being a sensitive myself, and it runs in my family. We follow procedure. We do not, I or anyone else that is a sensitive, we don't discuss it. Anything that is sensed, we note it, and so that it's not influencing the real-time reactions or perception. And then after the fact, those notes, get compared and see if they match up to anything that came up objectively. Being a sensitive, I think sometimes it can help in, say, an EVP session, that if I receive information, I might ask a question that I might not have asked otherwise. And I always try to throw different control questions out anyway during EVP sessions, just for objectivity. Mm-hmm. And I think it can be helpful as long as you do keep it objective. But I have seen mediums where, again, it's, the floating head in the corner, or in, someone's pulling on my feet through the floor, or this kind of thing. And then other people start feeling, I'm being touched. And you never know. Would they have had that sensation, except for they attributed to that, and they are giving credibility because this person is a medium.
Okay.
So I think you can get information that maybe you don't have otherwise, but if you start revealing it real time, it's a problem.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our hour break, and we'll come back and field the rest of this question and so many more. The phone lines are open, 720-923-0500, if you want to call and be a part of it. But we'll be right back, everybody. Don't go away.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across just make sure that you're well fed.
Caroline is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the second hour of our show tonight. The first hour is going absolutely brilliantly. I'm just tickled, thrilled, because, you know, shows like this are a lot of legwork. They're a lot of work, and there's a lot of logistics involved, much more than any other show that I've ever done, with the exception of the psychic roundtable that we did a couple months ago. But I think it's going wonderful, and I'm just so thrilled you all are with us, both those of you out there and those of you that are part of the show. Thank you guys so much. Before we went to break, there was a question on the table about psychic mediums. Do they help or hinder investigations? How do you feel about that? Mike and Lisa answered, but Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I had a coworker pinging me, so I had to make sure my work IM was shut down. I swear to God, it never ends. But having a sensitive or a psychic on an investigation, I mean, as long as they're willing to go through the same training as everyone else about what to do, what not to do, and how to do their part in collecting evidence, I am thrilled to have someone who's intuitive or sensitive around. And I mean, I like investigating, you know, people like that just as much as I like investigating the people that are allegedly dead. So no more the merrier.
Right. No, that's fantastic, and thank you guys for answering that. That was a question from our very own Deb Varner, who also does some investigating as well. Now, I think it's as an additional point. For me, one of the heartbreakers is thinking that people might be stuck, that they might be trapped. They don't really know what's going on, and for me, I just think it's so amazing and wonderful not only to investigate a place, but to maybe also render assistance to those that, for whatever reason, didn't or weren't able to cross over. And I think that can be a real healing and cathartic experience then. But yeah, I love all your guys' points, and that's a great point. Those are great points. That's you know, to walk around and announce everything, it's amazing, those gifts are, but you're right, it does, you know, Mike, you said it creates, you know, it removes the objectivity when that happens, and those are great, and there should be specific protocol involved with that to keep it objective and as sterile as you can, I guess. Great points. We got more questions. Let me get back to that page. And the next question comes from Jason, who's the ghost guy on Facebook, and wonderful guy, and also an investigator. But he says, here's one. Why do so many investigators use EMF detectors as a communication device? What should the primary use of such a device be? And he says, I know the answers, but just some ideas for questions. So, what do you guys think? Let's start with Dan. What do you think EMF devices should primarily be used for, and should they be used to ask questions?
Yeah, I think EMF detectors should be used to measure the electromagnetic field of a specific area. I don't know about a communication device. It seems like there's just too much. There's the ability to be extremely suggestive there. And I mean, especially if you're talking about something like a K2, I mean, a car driving down the street next to my house, the spark plug could set one of those things off on the right day. So I see kind of, make it turn blue, make it turn red. That's not my style. I probably wouldn't do that. But that's just me.
Okay. And MCAT, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I'm more along the lines of that. I think that EMF detectors are good for measuring background radiation. And then after you get that done, what you're looking for is spikes, something that don't belong, free-floating EMF bubbles that can't be, pinned to a specific location. Using them to ask questions, there's an awful lot of randomness involved in there that, can you really say you're really getting a response from that, or is that something that's, random?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't use them to ask questions. Could you? I don't see it being concrete enough to really know that you got an answer from that, or is that something else?
Okay, good point. And Lisa, what do you think?
I really agree. We tend to have EMF detectors out if there are spikes. We try to correlate the timing to audio and other measurements. An EMF spike by itself, who knows? Even a free-floating EMF bubble or anything, it can be a lot of different things, even if you can't pin down the reason. If you are having a pattern based on that is correlated to other factors and other responses, it may or may not mean something. It's just one thing out there. But just because you get an EMF spike doesn't mean that anything paranormal is going on. No.
Okay. Yeah, and great feedback, guys. Thank you. And now I know that I've seen them used that way several times on many of the television shows. Especially, I think mostly where I ever saw that was on the old Ghost Hunters show, which I'm a big fan. I enjoyed that show a lot, and I think that they did a good job for the most part. But yeah, I would never have thought about the things that you guys have brought up, but those are great points. I didn't realize they could be that sensitive to pick up just ambient atmospheric sparks like a spark plug. That to me is very troubling. So yeah, I see. I love this. We're all learning.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, here's a good example along the lines of a spark plug. Spark plug, I mean, it would have to be fairly close, but a good example is over time you'll find that a lot of haunted locations are very near railroad tracks, particularly active railroad tracks. And what you find is that when a train is going down the track, it creates an EMF bubble that goes out hundreds and hundreds of yards. And it's not the generators, it's not the engines, it's the friction between the wheels and the rails. And so we often find that you go out, this place has a lot of activity, and you'll find railroad tracks very close by. And if you are lucky enough that you're investigating when trains go by, that's often when you get your best EVPs.
Oh, okay. Okay, now does that almost act like a white noise? Does that almost act like a white noise at that point to generate a field they may be able to speak through better? Or
I don't know. It almost seems over time that strong EMF bubbles tend to almost just amplify EVPs.
Okay.
I'm not so sure that it increases activity, but I think if you're getting a response, it almost acts as a stereo amplifier. It's not uncommon to get better quality EVPs at that moment. And I do think energy is related to paranormal phenomena. I think it is a function of time, space, and energy. Mm-hmm. And that's just one example. But yeah, when you're investigating a house or a building that has consistent activity, we find it's not too uncommon to find active railroad tracks within a few hundred yards.
Excellent. Okay, very cool. I did not know that, and I love this because I'm learning a ton just listening to you guys. We got another caller, everybody. So why don't we get to that and see what's going on? And this is our friend Jim up in Canada. How you doing, Jim?
Yeah, you know it's me.
God bless caller ID, brother.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I got a question for a chicken. She wants to know, what do they think of Ouija boards?
Oh, okay. Dan, why don't we start with you? What do you think of Ouija boards?
I like the Ouija board for kind of having fun, maybe doing a little bit of a psychological experiment. But as far as legit investigation, I don't really see I don't see how you could quantify anything to do with the Ouija board. So I tend to kind of shy away from those on investigations. But I have several around because I like them. I like the symbology of it all, and they're, like I said, they're fun psychological experiments.
Okay. And MCAT, what do you think?
Don't like them, don't use them.
Okay.
That's a short answer. I think that there's been enough evidence to document that it's, that might not be a spiritual thing, that it's more of two humans pushing the planchette around. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it is something spiritual. Mm-hmm. You're communicating with something that you have no idea what its identity is, and you have no idea what its intentions are. Mm-hmm. And you want to bring that into your home. I think that's generally a bad idea.
Amen. I agree with you. And Lisa, what do you think of Ouija boards?
Well, to be perfectly honest, most Ouija boards are, they're a piece of cardboard with a piece of paper glued to it, made in a mass-produced factory. They have no, there's no energy put into it or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, spirit talking boards that are made by practitioners, mm-hmm. they may be infused with some energy from the practitioner. That's a little different. Ouija has this connotation, and to be honest, I found over time, those that have a, quote, bad experience with a Ouija board tend to be religious believers. Oh. Those that aren't don't tend to have any particular
affiliation,
statistical experience with them. I think that it goes back to the idea of a sensitive or an empath or medium, that if anything is going on with it, it's because the person is focusing. They're using it as a focal object, and it could be a Ouija board, it could be a spoon, it could be whatever. And then, but as far as evidence, again, there's latent muscle movement, etc., that they're not good for any investigation technique, really. But as far as the fear of demons or spirits or whatever, if you want to get literal, it's no different than an EVP session. If you're focusing, if you're doing an EVP session and you're focusing your energy on the recorder, mm-hmm. it's no different than a Ouija board. Mm-hmm. So as far as what you're talking to, in reality, we don't know what we're talking to under any circumstances that we're investigating.
No, that's probably true. Yeah, that's true. Great responses, guys. Thank you. Jim, what else do you got?
Well, I was going to ask them what their thoughts of could some poltergeists or paranormal activity actually be extraterrestrials just screwing with people.
Okay, great question.
In their homes. Sure.
MCAT, what do you think?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's fair. Any follow-up to that, or just no idea?
Could it be aliens? I suppose, since we don't really have any solid answer nailed down, it could be, mm-hmm. but I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
I just don't have enough information to really have an answer for that.
Okay, fair enough. Dan, what's your thoughts?
Well, you know how I like to keep it. If you're being purely scientific about it, yes, there's a mathematical possibility that's the case. Could be, could be not. That's why we investigate.
Very good. And Lisa?
Yeah, again, I mean, there could be a chance that it is, or, I mean, there's theories as to interdimensional interaction, that kind of thing. But there's no way to quantify that. And then you have that, is it possible? Yes. And then if you look at the laws of probability, you'd have to question, well, if aliens are going to somehow interact with us, why? I'm not sure the utility of interacting with us in that manner. What would serve their purposes? If you were coming interstellar from another planet, I'm not sure that it would, really benefit you or be efficient to interfere or interact with beings on another planet in that manner. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, fair answers. Great answers, guys. And I really like the open-mindedness, and I appreciate all of your opinions on this. It's like, you're not saying it can't be something. You're saying we're researching it to figure out what it is, but nothing's off the table. And I suppose, how can it be? So the cereal bowl moved. I mean, you can't know what's moving it, and you can't research something if you already have predisposed ideas of what it is. So you can't objectively research it. So I really appreciate that from you guys, and I respect that a lot. I think that kind of objectivity is important. So, anything else, Jim?
No, that's about it.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for calling in and being a part of the show. It's great to hear from you.
No problem.
All right. Have a good night.
Okay. See ya.
All right. So, that you guys are blowing me away. I love the context and the thoroughness of your answers. I love the way you guys are looking at this stuff, because I think a lot of people would assume that paranormal investigators go in with so much of a presupposition of what they're going to encounter. And it's really, really refreshing. And I've heard this from Dan many times, and you as well, Lisa. And I appreciate your answer as well, or Mike. I got to start calling you Mike and not your chat name. I'm sorry. It's just how I've known you all this time. But
That's all right.
I think you guys are absolutely phenomenal, and I'm just so pleased that you're here with us. But the next question. Okay, this is actually a question from Jim that he had submitted to the Facebook survey, but it says, "Why on the shows do they have cameras aimed at them? I want to see the ghost, not their snot dribbling noses." So, what do you guys say to that, Lisa? What do you think? Why do they aim the cameras at themselves?
Well, because they are wanting to build viewership, and you build viewership by bonding the audience with your character, even if it's, quote, a reality show, even though technically those shows are really not pure reality shows because a lot of it's scripted. If the audience doesn't have empathy and a relationship with the investigators on the show, they're not going to tune in. So that's why they do it.
Sure. Yeah, good point. Dan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, so absolutely. Ditto on the primary reason they do it. I've spoke with a couple people that were involved with, production and filming of paranormal television shows. And the first thing they'll try and pass off is, well, it's to document the investigation. You have to document the investigator and everything like that, which I in one vein agree with. But as far as the shows go, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who they're filming, because most of them are they're collecting data the wrong way to begin with. So yeah, that's my jaded opinion anyway.
Okay. And MCAT, what do you think?
Yeah, similarly, it's so they can get reaction shots from when something happens, and so they have a character for the audience to empathize with.
Yeah, and it's probably just as well to build suspense. It's like, oh my God, look at that face. What is he seeing? I want to see it. I want to see it. And then they go to they go to commercial. It's like, oh, you bastards. Oh, but great question, Jim. Thank you. I know what you're talking about because I watched those shows for years, and I'm like, I don't care what your scared face is. What are you seeing? Aim the cameras out, and I always thought, if when we start doing investigations as the Paranormal Portal, which is something that we want to do, and I hope that we can include all three of you at some point or in some fashion, because you guys are the ones out there with the boots on the ground, and we definitely want to learn from the best. So, but I definitely wouldn't have it showcase my face. That to me, it's a waste of time. And if you don't get evidence, you don't get evidence. But I think that's part of building suspense. And it's just, it's just good scripting, as you guys have alluded to. So the next question, and I'm not sure how this relates, but it is a good question. What's your take on the crop circles? And this is from Dwayne Rock Triplet. Dan, why don't we start with you? Do you have any opinion about crop circles?
Well, with crop circles, crop circles with any, I'm using sarcastic air quotes here, evidence of aliens. No one's going to believe something they didn't capture or didn't witness themselves, or at least they shouldn't. Okay. If they're an objective investigator, they won't. But they could be something. I think as quickly as they pop up, I kind of don't want to think someone would hoax that just for fun. Yeah. I don't see what would really be fun about running around and doing these things overnight. Yeah.
Okay. MCAT, what do you think? Crop circles.
Crop circles. I think that some of them are man-made, and I don't know if the other there are some that are not. I really don't know. Okay. I know that there have been some people who have admitted to, and that was a long time ago, admitted to hoaxing some of these, but
sure.
Again, don't have enough information to really make a good decision one way or the other.
Right. Good. Yeah, and that's fair enough. And Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I think, obviously I do think a certain number of them are hoaxes, and some of the hoaxers have come out and actually demonstrated how they did it in the past. It's been a few years back now, but I've read that some researchers have determined that some smaller scale crop circles can naturally occur under certain atmospheric conditions with wind patterns, etc. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I've ever read and researched that raises a question of a non-natural cause, or that wasn't a hoax, was certain ones that the certain parts of the stems of the plants basically had swelled and popped in ways that scientists didn't have a ready answer for. Mm-hmm. So they basically said, well, something happened, but we don't know. So I think there's a few that are just unexplained, but most of them are natural occurrences or hoaxes.
Very good. Yeah, and I think that's I have to tell the audience that's listening now, none of these questions have been pitched to these guys before the show. All of these reactions are absolutely organic and real, and that's the way I always want to do the show. So none of this was set up in advance. None of these questions were given ahead of time, not by virtue of secrecy, but just by virtue of, I always like the show to be a discussion, and this is certainly what it is. But I have to tell you how absolutely impressive I think this is, that you guys are fielding such a diverse array of questions, and you all have ready responses. It's just really, really great. Let me see now. There was one via email. Let me get to this one, and let's see. Now this one was from Jess, who is not able to be here in the chat tonight. but she says, I'll be working, but this question, even though it's aimed at one of our guests, which is Mike, I think it'll be great for all of you guys to address if you don't mind. Excuse me. It says, I'll be working Friday and Saturday nights, but I will be back Sunday and Monday in chat. I do have questions for MCAT. Could you please ask him if there was an early paranormal experience? Oh, I guess we kind of did ask this, didn't we? If there was an early paranormal experience that had inspired him to become a paranormal investigator. If so, what profound paranormal experience did he have when he was younger? So, MCAT, did you have a profound experience when you were younger?
Yeah, I've had quite a few experiences when I was younger. The most profound.
Oops! Hold that thought, brother.
Break.
We're at the break. We're gonna pick this up on the other side. I don't have the clock open. I got so many windows open here, but I do apologize for that. We ran right into it. But we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen,
right.
for the last half hour. Don't go away. All right, ladies and gentlemen, last half hour of the show. It has flown by as usual on the portal. It always does, but this is tonight is no exception for sure. The listener line for you guys to call in, not for listening, I guess, but to call in and be a part of the show. If you have a question for our panel, please feel free to call in. Again, it's different number for the portal than the normal TFR live call-in number. So our call-in number for the portal is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. So call in if you'd like to pose a question of your own or get some feedback, or you just want to tell our investigators about something you've experienced and would like their opinion. All the questions are welcome here on the show. But welcome back, everybody, and I guess we should get back to you, MCAT. I'm sorry I had to interrupt you there, but go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
The one that really got me started questioning things that, especially the paranormal, was my encounter with the being of light. And I think I set this in a while ago. This was back in the early 90s. I was 23. I newly married. We were living in an apartment. And she had fallen asleep on the couch watching TV. I was in bed because I had to get up and work the next day. And I awoke to her screaming, and it wasn't playing around. It was, "Get over here and help me, I'm in trouble." So I woke to her screaming, threw the covers off, ran down the hall. I turned right. I saw my wife on the couch, and at the end of the couch was something made of light. Wow. About 6 feet. It was rotating. It was different colors. There was no discernible feature. It was just brilliant light. And I'm standing there looking at it, and a beam of light comes out, hits me in the face, and it was physical. I could feel being touched on my face by this beam of light. As soon as that happens, I immediately woke up in bed. Just bolt upright. Take the covers off, walk down, everything's fine. My wife didn't remember anything happening from that.
Wow. I do remember sharing that, but it's one of those that I know I've heard it before, but now hearing it again, it's still an amazingly powerful experience. Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of is what got me trying to figure out what that was, and if there was, I've only found one other person that had a similar experience.
Okay.
And it did the same thing. It was he woke up out of bed, saw it, put him right back to sleep, and he woke up the next day.
Do you have any working hypothesis of what this thing might be?
No.
Yeah.
I don't have a. It's just energy. It's some kind of light energy, and it's able to do things and interact in our world in some way. How or why, I don't know.
Wow. What a powerful experience, though. And you're sure it wasn't just a lucid dream. You're absolutely sure. Did you have any physical marks from this at all, or any kind of?
No.
Okay.
I didn't have any marks, but I've never been able to forget it.
Yeah.
And amazing. It was just this did not feel like a dream. This was something this was a real event that happened. Oh. That's how this feels. When I think about it, that's exactly what it seems like. It's a real event.
Wow. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So, I guess we'll, that's basically what started your journey then. Okay. I wonder now, what kind of advice could all of you give for those who are interested in starting out doing some investigating of their own? What kind of just basic advice, basic toolkit kind of stuff? We can certainly talk about gear. I know that's something that Dan, you had mentioned about something about the appropriate gear for the investigation. Could you elaborate on what you were meaning?
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're referring to when we were all chatting the other day about. Yeah. So one thing I find myself chiming in a lot about with groups across the country is using the right equipment in the right space. You see the SLS type cameras on Facebook. It seems like every third person on any of the paranormal lists is selling their own SLS camera. And too many times I've seen groups get really excited about investing in that kind of piece of equipment and then taking it into a room that's, just way too large. Those things like the SLS or, the Kinect cameras, they've got a working range of about 6 feet by 6 feet. Anything outside of that, you're just kind of wasting your time because there's just not enough power to get the light out that far. So things like that. I see a lot of 360 camera usage, and I can tell you from experience, the 360 cameras, they're great if you've got the right space for it or you've got the right lighting for it. If you've got the right lighting, then 360 is one of the best things you can have. But again, if you're putting it, even if you go on my YouTube channel and look at some of the videos of when I was testing out a 360 in Mansfield, we were in the middle of the chapel at Mansfield Reformatory, and 360 got 3 feet, 4 feet. The rest of the room just ate the light, and it was, you spend so much time. You think about just reviewing regular footage, right? Video is probably the most cumbersome thing to review of all the evidence we collect. And with 360, now you don't just have the one perspective. If you're really being, an investigator about it, look at how much video you have to review now. So again, the right equipment for the right space, knowing when to shield things away from other pieces of equipment, and how to really log the data. And I could spend all night talking about data logging, but yeah. The right equipment for the right space is what I was meaning.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. I think that, of course, we all want that big toolkit that has the SLS camera, it has the infrared, the ultraviolet, it has the EMFs and the REM pods and the, but, a lot of that just seems like, for one, it would be incredibly cumbersome to set up and maintain accurate observation of it, and then for two, that it is probably just such overkill for most locations.
Yeah, and I would, I'm a firm believer in going minimal and let giving your body a chance to be your most important piece of investigative equipment anymore, unless I am trying to isolate and document specific readings of specific activity because I've been to a location a bunch of different times and I have a really good idea about what kind of activity is going to happen. I'll generally just go with a decent full spectrum camera that I know how to use to get good shots in low light, and a good voice recorder. And that's really pen and paper, I think, are a must. You should always have a scratch pad and a pen just in case you've got to get something out of your head really quick. But those two, I've had more luck with voice recorders and cameras than I have taking full on video and insert geeky piece of equipment here.
Okay. All right. We got another call, so I guess we'll table that question. Give the callers a chance. This is area code 858. You're on the air.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how you doing, Lewis?
Oh, good, man. I have a really fun experience at the Whaley House.
At the Whaley House?
Time ago.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. There's upstairs, the second floor, right?
There's a
second. I saw an orb that flew somewhere by the bedroom into another bedroom.
Wow. Yeah.
But the most fun one was the master bedroom downstairs. actually smelled perfume from out of nowhere.
Wow. Okay. What is our panel? What do you guys think, Elisa? What do you think about things like smells? Do you think that those are definitely evidence of paranormal presences?
Well, it's hard to say whether they are evidence of a presence. I mean, certain smells do seem to be correlated with places with activity, tobacco, old-time aftershave or cologne or perfume is common. One of the more interesting ones I've encountered was in a building that had a restaurant 100 years ago, walking in the area that had been a kitchen and smelling the sense of someone cooking. Whether it's, and if it is paranormal, whether it's residual or not, it's hard to say. I think there's a correlation, but the reason, I'm not sure.
Okay, very good. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, phantom smells are one of those strange things that, I don't know, we've experienced them we were at a house. I've talked about this one with the autistic child who saw the monster in the tree. And someone was smelling pipe tobacco.
Oh.
We were all in the kitchen and going over some notes, and just all of a sudden we were picking up pipe tobacco. And it was two people had said, hey, I'm getting some pipe tobacco here, just kind of out of the blue. So was that something supernatural, or was that some type of, where it was just caught in the wood, in the floorboards, because it had a hardwood floor, and maybe that shifted or expanded and released something? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Right, because certainly wood is an absorbent material, and if there's change in humidity or temperature, it can release some of those stored up smells. That's a good point. Dan, what do you think?
So with the smells, I can remember one time I've experienced something like that, and actually it was a group of us that experienced. It was a rose smell, and so I mean, after everyone in a general area just kind of reported smelling it, fine, we all, we write it down, we notate it, we move on. Then when it comes back a second time, that's when I start, sniffing around everyone to make sure they didn't wear any perfume or deodorant to an investigation. So I've had it happen. What I really wanted to do, since it did happen, is have the right equipment to collect samples of the air and process samples of the air. Because with the phantom smells and sometimes with disembodied voices, I'm really curious as to whether it's a physical thing that is coming from the outside and traveling, like a disembodied voice. Is it something that is going across the air and into my ear and bouncing off the eardrum like any other sound? Or is it something that's lighting up the same parts of my brain that would? Is it something that's happening in my head? Does that make it any more or less real? I mean, the net result is the same. So,
yeah,
good point. I think that's wonderful. And anything else, Lewis?
Yeah, it was after the experience, my nose started itching.
Oh, did it? So you were getting a reaction to the smell as well, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
Wow, that's pretty intense. Thank you for sharing that, brother.
Otherwise, these days, getting chills, where something goes through my body and I just shake.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what Dan was referring to is, giving your body a chance to be a part of the investigation, because we probably are the most sensitive instrument there, So the physical sensations are certainly a powerful research tool as well, I suppose. Did you have any more questions, Lewis?
No, that's all. Oh, lunch. Yeah. You see, a long time ago, I used to see shadow people outside my house, like outside my backyard.
Well, at least they're outside. Keep them outside, Lewis.
Actually,
don't let them in.
I kicked them all out.
All right. Good deal, brother. Thank you for calling.
Bye. All right, you too.
Okay, have a good night. All right, there we go. And I want to get back to that question, though, because I think that having all three of you here is a great chance to let people, know how to begin, how to start. And let's start with Lisa, if you don't mind.
Equipment and so forth.
Or just how.
I agree.
Equipment is one thing, but just what is the best way to get started?
Well, I think since if you're in an area that has established teams, see if you can get involved. And if you're not comfortable with one team, try someone else. Different people have different approaches. But research is very important. I think that a lot of people, particularly that have only had exposure to investigation through the TV shows, kind of view it as urban exploring. And people I see that are new to getting into investigating, that their frame of reference is around the shows, have a hard time transitioning to other techniques and styles because they think the shows are a Bible. There's a little bit of a backlash going on in the field right now that I'm seeing where people who've been in the field for a couple of years are basically telling people who've been around 20, 30 years that they don't know what they're doing. And other people have noted this as well. And so I think they need to forget what they saw on TV. Another thing is with equipment, they need to really understand how it works. And that was touched on before, knowing the spaces and so forth. But for instance, with the Kinects, the SLS cameras, it's a shiny bauble, with a stick figure. But the problem is, as soon as the Kinects came out years ago, within 12 hours, there were hacks online from teenagers who had figured out, hey, I can hack the programming, and here's this cool effect I can make it do. And that's really all that is going on with these that are being used for paranormal investigation with a stick figure. If it shows up a stick figure, it's a reflection off a hard surface. And so if you understand how the programming works, then a lot of equipment you really don't use. I've got cases and cases of equipment that most of it I don't use. But if I'm doing a public event or an educational event, I'll bring it out and explain how it works and why you may not want to use it. But most people, because they've seen it on TV, they take it as, oh, it's valid, and don't look further into why is it doing this or how is it working. And I think that's something that needs to be developed again. But connect with people in the field and understand what you're using.
Okay, very good. And Dan, how to get started?
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to get started in paranormal investigating, I mean, first off, awesome. We need more people collecting data, like I said earlier. But I think you really have to dig down and ask yourself one question: do you want to get into it to prove something to someone else, or do you want to get into it to prove something to yourself? And I think you have to go back to that question as you kind of go through, I don't want to call it, your career, if you will, because that's going to determine why. I mean, it's going to determine why you want to be, or it's going to explain why you want to be paranormal investigator, one, but it's really going to determine what kind of people you should seek out, and if you definitely agree with Lisa, get with a team, because everything you think someone else knows more. They have different experiences. The group mindset is a really good thing when you're with a good team. But if you do join a team, stick to your commitments. Don't flake out and give the field a bad name.
Sure, good points. And Mike, what do you think? What's the best way to get started, in your opinion?
Yeah, I concur with the group. Get with a team. You don't need to spend a lot of money. You don't have to buy expensive equipment, pen and paper, point and shoot camera, digital voice recorder, flashlight. Get you going. But get with a team. Get with people who know what they're doing and were experienced with this. I think that's the best way to start off.
Absolutely. And I was going to touch on that tonight, but it looks like we're going to be running all out of time. But I do think the flashlight test is kind of a unique thing, because the manipulation of an actual physical object, I think is it's something. But I don't know. What do you guys think, Dan? What do you think of the flashlight test as a means of investigating?
I think there's too much inconsistency with thermodynamics and the general environment, the general ambient environment. Now, if we were to take those flashlights and we had an array of them and they were doing things in unison, I might be a little more impressed. But generally, I don't really go for it.
Okay. Lisa, what do you think?
We've experimented with a variety of different ones. When we do use them, I tend to use mag lights because they are aircraft-grade aluminum. I've consulted engineers, and if for there to be a physical manipulation of the case and actually to turn the light on or off, an O-ring has to be depressed. And if the cap is not being screwed down or up, flexing through thermodynamics would equal an energy exchange of about 2,000 degrees. And so that's not very likely. Every engineer I've talked to says, no, that's not happening. And so, I think it's interesting. I mean, I've had times that 6 or 7 would go off in together in patterns. That by itself is not evidence. It is one thing. Okay, if you're getting consistent responses to questions asked different ways over time, it becomes interesting, but it's one more factor to look at with everything else you're doing. I have to say the most interesting thing I ever had happen with it was at a location that we had used flashlights for the first time, got internally consistent responses over a period of about 7 hours, clipped video with that into about 20 minutes, and we were showing the owners. As it starts to play, we had just set out 2 flashlights on the table demonstrating how they were done. And within about a minute into the video, the lights on the table were going on and off together with the video.
Oh my gosh.
Throughout the rest of the video.
Wow.
That again is it evidence? Not per se, but it's highly coincidental.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting.
Okay, now we're about down to the 1 minute mark. The best way to get in touch with you and follow what you're doing, Lisa?
The easiest way is on Facebook with the Paranormal Science Lab page. You can always message us directly through there. I also have a page for my books and writing, Lisa Livingston Martin author. You can catch me there as well.
All right, excellent. And Dan, Best way to keep in touch?
Facebook, Red Eyes and Dead Batteries. Yeah, that's probably the best.
All right. And Mike, how about you?
Through Facebook or, I'm usually on the chat board, during the show, so I'm pretty easy to get in contact with.
All right, everybody. Well, that about brings us to a close. A special, huge thank you to our panel of guests. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much. If you're listening on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, stick around for Nikki Colombo coming up next here on our channel. And I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. And tomorrow night, Robin Moonshadow joins Don and I in the portal. You guys have a great night. We'll see you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.